What is up, everybody? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, bringing you another edition of Set Point. And we have a lot to talk about, such as the upsets that went on last weekend, such as UCLA women's volleyball toppling the Huskies of Washington, the number 10 Huskies, might I add. How did the number 18 Bruins do it, and what were the keys to their victory? Also, on the SEC side of things, Tennessee, the Lady Bulls, pulled not one, but 2 victories out against number 16 Missouri. How did the Bulls do it, and what went wrong for the Tigers? Also, on the men's side of things, we had USC, the unranked USC, who had a delay in their season, taking down number 6 UCLA in men's volleyball. Talk about a big upset right there. Good for the Trojans. Also, we had NJIT topple number 11 Penn State after losing the previous day. Also, we have some big showdowns to preview in the Big Ten, such as Minnesota at Nebraska and Penn State at Ohio State. All that and more here on Set Point. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And welcome one, welcome all to another edition of Set Point. Thank you all for joining me on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon. And I gotta give a shout to the chat room real quick. First and foremost, thank you to Larry B, Andrew Hagenbaugh, and Adam Karnick for popping in the chat room. Listen, it looks like everything is all good in the neighborhood. Everything is sounding nice and clear. Just like smoke signals, just kidding, not like smoke signals, but just like clear water, and we are good to go. So before we dive on into this volleyball action, see what I did there? Dive. We got some sponsors to go over. The official sponsors of IE Sports Radio. Our first official sponsor for IE Sports Radio is Legacy Financial. 2020 was a tough year. However, staying positive, keeping your faith, and continuing to work hard is the goal. If you're in a financial struggle at the moment, you're doing well, and you want to get to the next level, or if you're looking for a new opportunity to work for yourself and earn money part-time, give IO a call at 510-928-2104. Once again, that number is 510-928-2104 to book your appointment today. Io and her husband, Andrew, are just 2 people on a mission to help families build a legacy. You can follow them on Twitter at legacy_uncut. And then you can follow them on Instagram at Sims_uncut. IE Sports Radio's second sponsor is Mama's Always Right Media. Are you feeling overwhelmed with schoolwork? Are those essays keeping you up at night? Don't lose sleep. Pick up the phone. Mama's Always Right Writing Agency will give you quality essays, and they will always make their deadlines. Sleep soundly knowing that they are on the job. For more information, call 626-653-3649. Once again, that number is 626-653-3649. And on Mama's Always Right Media are their 2 podcasts. The first one being It Goes Down in the PM. Make sure to check out the newest episode of It Goes Down in the PM, brought to you by Mama's Always Right Media. The second episode, or the second podcast from Mama's Always Right Media is Coffee After Dark. Don't miss the next chapter of your favorite love story. Check out Season 2 of Coffee After Dark, brought to you by Mama's Always Right Media, where they will help you open your business from start to finish. And then the last sponsor from IE Sports Radio is the Sports Rundown. Are you a sports fan, but have too much going on in your life these days to keep up with the 24/7 sports news cycle? Or maybe you are new to sports and want to understand the nuances better. If so, then the Sports Rundown is for you. They are a new podcast that gives you basic, professional, and collegiate sports news, stats, tidbits, and fun facts by the time you get to work, start that second cup of coffee, or finish walking the dog. Enough information to make you rich with knowledge involving sports while talking about current sporting events, and they will teach you something fun along the way, like about mascots, uniforms, history, feel-good stories, and sports rules. They even cover the Premier League. New episodes drop Monday and Friday mornings, so come give them a listen. So thank you to our 3 sponsors, The Sports Rundown, Mama's Always Right Media, and Legacy Financial for being the official sponsor of iSports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Alright, now let's get on into this volleyball action. So, what I like to do is I like to recap some of the noteworthy upsets from last week. We'll start with the men's side because I like to be different. So, on the men's side of things, we had New Jersey Institute of Technology taking down number 11 Penn State. So, that was quite the upset they had. I mean, NJIT hasn't had too many matches this year, and they haven't really had that big standout victory. They almost took down Lewis, but unfortunately, Lewis pulled out the reverse sweep and broke everyone's hearts in New Jersey Institute of Technology. So NJIT had another chance to avenge their first loss to Penn State, as Penn State won the first matchup against NJIT in 4 sets. So as for this matchup against Penn State, it was actually quite different. NJIT smoked Penn State. Well, the first 2 sets were pretty close, as NJIT won 25-21, 25-22. But the third set, NJIT spanked Penn State 25-9. Yes, they held the number 11 team in the nation to only 9 points in that third set. I don't know what went wrong for Penn State, but I will say this. NJIT is actually a pretty solid team. In the conference, in the EIVA, New Jersey Institute of Technology is the biggest threat to Penn State. So definitely don't sleep on those Highlanders. So good job, NJIT. So NJIT was led by Gimeno Alvaro, who had 16 kills and only 1 hitting error on 23 swings for a hitting percentage of .652. That is darn impressive. 16 kills, only 1 hitting error. That's when you know you're on your A game. He was the only player in double digit kills right now at that moment, but the fact that NJIT got it done was quite impressive, as Julian Meisner had the second most kills for NJIT with 8, while the third most kill leader was Luca Berger, who had 5 kills. In terms of assists, Griffin Feisler had 31 assists, while NJIT had 10 service aces. That's pretty impressive, if you ask me. They did have 10 serving errors, but those aces definitely make up for it. So that's a nice little 10-to-10 ratio. In terms of blocks, they had a combined 8 blocks, and they had 5 solo stuffs, which is pretty impressive. In terms of digs, NJIT had 27 digs overall, and as a team, NJIT hit 413. That is impressive. That's when you know you're doing really good. As for Penn State, they did not have one player in double digits in terms of kills. Their kill leader was Cal Fisher, who had 9 kills, while McCall Cowell had 8 kills. The third most kill leader on the team was Tim Herget, who had 6 kills. In terms of assists, Cole Bogner had 26 assists, while Will Bantle had 6 assists, but he was playing libero, so we don't care. or he was actually playing defensive specialist, but still. In terms of aces, Penn State only had a whopping 2 service aces, while they missed 11 serves. That is not going to get the job done. That is no bueno, my dudes. In terms of blocks, they only had 4.5 blocks. All of them were assists. Block assists, as they had 9 block assists, which translates to 4.5 blocks for the whole game. So there's that. They only had 23 digs, in which they were led by McCall Cowell and Cole Bogner, who each had 8 digs. And then as a team, Penn State only hit 207. So very underwhelming performance the second time for Penn State, but Penn State's kind of had their flaws, so yeah. Adam asks, who is top in the Big Ten volleyball right now? So, I'll get to the women's in a little bit. There is no Big Ten men's volleyball, so because theoretically there's only 2 Big Ten volleyball schools, as Ohio State and Penn State are the only 2 that the only NCAA men's volleyball schools in terms of the Big Ten, so you can't make a conference with just two Big Ten schools. You just can't. So they have different conferences. They have the EIVA, and then I forget the other one, the name of the other conference, but it's basically like an Eastern Coast conference, as you'll see teams like Lewis of Romeoville. You'll even see Princeton in there, Harvard, and a few other schools that are in the area, so in that pretty much like area zone. So it's complicated. I pretty much talked about this in the past, but I'll talk more about the whole NCAA men's volleyball thing once the season is in full swing. Like, once everyone is starting to play. And when I mean everyone, I mean even the Big West schools, which is pretty much dominant. And Andrew says, let's go Buckeyes. I hate to tell you this, Andrew, but I won't like fully go in depth when it comes to these men's volleyball matches, but Ohio State kind of had a rough weekend against McKendree, and unfortunately they lost both those matches. Ohio State was tied for 14th in the AVCA polls from last week, but unfortunately Ohio State lost twice to McKendree, so that was quite the bummer, but they'll get it together. It's still pretty early in the season, and then they still have the tournament that's coming up, or the conference tournament that's coming up, so they'll still be fine. So continuing on with the other important men's volleyball upset, we had USC taking down number 6 UCLA. And Larry, I hope you're listening to this, because let me tell you this, I was not expecting USC to pull off this upset. So USC really shocked everybody. And here's the thing about USC. USC didn't even start their season right away. Their season was pushed back, I think it was like 1.5 weeks, because of a COVID mini outbreak at the school. And then they were able to get that squared away, and then everyone turned out negative for COVID-19 and play ball. And their season opener came against UCLA, which everyone was thinking, USC is going to get spanked. Wrong. USC actually beat UCLA, but it actually wasn't easy. USC took the first two sets 30-28 and 32-30. That's how easy it was not for USC, because the fact that USC took both those sets against a very talented UCLA team is quite astounding. The third set went UCLA's way, as they won that third set 25-19. Then the fourth set, USC and UCLA were back and forth. It looked like USC was going to take the match, and then UCLA was going to look to force a fifth set, but then USC closed the door and beat UCLA 26-24, which basically had UCLA fans raging all over Twitter, and they were super salty. They were salty, and they have every right to be, because UCLA lost to a USC team that didn't even have a match underneath their belts, while UCLA had three matches prior, 2 of which were against the number 1 team in the nation, and 1 of which they actually won. So I don't know, UCLA, what happened to you? If only Larry and Marcus were in the chat room, I could see them roasting UCLA right now. Andrew says, I'll have to have a little talk with Kevin to get Ohio State back on track. Uh-oh. It's still early, though. So, back to USC and UCLA. USC was led by Billy Fauntleroy, who had 18 kills. He did have 10 hitting errors, which kind of killed the mood, but that's alright. Brandon Browning also had 16 kills, only 5 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of .393 off of 28 attempts. And then Vekas Lewin had 9 kills, 3 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of .316. Pretty solid. In terms of assists, Chris Hall had 49 assists, while in terms of aces, this was the shocking stat. USC only had 1 service ace, and that was courtesy of Jackson Reed, but they missed 25 serves. So the fact that USC missed 25 serves, this was their first match in, and they were playing the number 6 team in the nation, makes me wonder how in Jupiter's jingle shoot UCLA lost this one. Oh, but it's going to get better for UCLA. It only gets better for UCLA. So, in terms of blocks, USC had 13.5 blocks. They had 5 solo stuffs and 17 block assists, which basically turns out to be 13.5 blocks. In terms of digs, they had 32 digs, 12 of which came to Cole Paxson, the MPSF Defensive Player of the Week. Good job to him. Also, Billy Fauntleroy had 7 digs, which were their top 2 dig leaders. Their third dig leaders had 4 digs, which was Chris Hull and Brandon Browning. As a team, USC had hit 246, which is not bad for actually being their first match of the season. I thought USC was going to hit a lot worse, so cool, good stuff, USC. I that's pretty good for a season opener, considering that USC hadn't played anybody, and they were playing at Pauley Pavilion. This was actually the first time, I want to say it was the first time since 2014 where USC beat UCLA at Pauley Pavilion. So it's quite astounding, honestly. And no, Larry, we don't care about Chicago pizza being better than New York pizza. Anyway, in terms of UCLA, they were led by Sam Coburn, who had 14 kills. He did have 5 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of .300. I'm going to get to him a little bit later because I got a lot to talk about this guys. So, anyway, their next kill leader was Ethan Champlin, who had 13 kills. He had 10 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of 94. That's not good. You cannot have that amount of kills and that hitting percentage. You're not going to win games. And then Austin Matautia had 9 kills, 3 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of 231. Solid numbers. In terms of assists, UCLA surprisingly ran a 6-2 offense. Marcus Partain had 22 assists, while Sam Coburn had 15 assists. In terms of service aces, UCLA had 4 service aces, 2 of which went to Ethan Champlin, 1 went to Matautia, and 1 went to Ian Eschenberg. In terms of blocks, UCLA had 14.5 blocks, which is pretty good. I'm just wondering how UCLA had those numbers, but they lost to a team that hadn't even had a match underneath their belts. Now, in terms of digs, Sam Coburn led the team in digs with 10. So, in other words, let's go back to Sam Coburn. Sam Coburn had 14 kills, 15 assists, and 10 digs. That dude flirted around and got himself a triple-double. That is actually very impressive, considering in volleyball, it's tough to even get triple-doubles, considering you have to get it as a setter / opposite, or you have to get it in terms of blocking the ball, and then hitting the ball, and then digging the ball. So, I gotta give Sam Coburn a little bit of a round of applause. So yeah, that's pretty impressive on Sam Coburn's part to have a triple-double. Unfortunately got spoiled because his team lost. Okay, back to the digs. Cole Pender also had 8 digs. Surprisingly enough, Cole Pender changed his number from number 4 to number 25. I'm not sure if he left his jersey behind or he wanted to change his number because reasons, but I'm not going to judge. So, anyway, back to UCLA. UCLA hit a dismal 175. So, that right there is the straw that broke the camel's back. UCLA cannot hit 175 and expect to win. I'm very shocked at how UCLA lost. They were able to take down the number 1 BYU, but they were not able to take down a USC team who had just started their season after their season got pushed back. UCLA, you've got a lot of explaining to do. But it just goes to show you that when it comes to rivalry games, toss out them records. Those records don't mean anything. So, again, I gotta give props to USC, not just because I'm a USC fan, but because that's not easy to do. You have your first match of the year, you're facing your rival on the road, and you take them down. And it's the first time since, I think, 2014 that USC took down UCLA at Pauley Pavilion. So, it's pretty impressive if you ask me. So, the USC fan within me is trying to trying to break out and laugh at UCLA more, but I'm not gonna. So, anyway, that is that match. So, again, kudos to USC men's volleyball. I'm actually gonna confirm that Yeah, it was the first time since 2014 that USC beat UCLA at Pauley Pavilion. So, good job, USC. I just wanted to confirm that because reasons. Okay, anyway, so now let's go to the women's side of things. There's actually quite a bit of recaps of the upsets that happened. So, this one comes from the Summit League. We had Omaha against South Dakota. South Dakota was projected to finish first in the Summit League, while Omaha was projected to finish third. So the first matchup between these two teams, South Dakota swept away Omaha. I was actually very disappointed because I thought Omaha was so much better than that. But the second matchup was actually quite better. But the first set, South Dakota won that first set 25-19. But the second and third set went Omaha's way as they won it 25-21 and then 25-18. South Dakota did win the fourth set 25-20, and then the fifth set was very tight. But Omaha led most of the way and won 15-12, earning the upset and actually putting the Summit League on off kilter because now Kansas City and Denver and South Dakota are all in a logjam for first place in that conference, while Omaha is still trying to play spoiler. So this just goes to show you, and I even called this last week. I said I knew Omaha and South Dakota was going to be a sneaky good series. So it just goes to show you that when it comes to matchups and good matchups, you don't even need to be in a Power 5 conference, which I'm actually going to get into that in a little bit later. So I won't go over the stats. I'll just go over the noteworthy stats as Sadie Limbach had 15 kills, only 4 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of .306, while Alexa Blaise had 14 kills, only 4 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of .278. In terms of digs, Claire Mountjoy had 20 digs. And as a team, Omaha only hit 188. Now, South Dakota was quite mind-boggling, as South Dakota was led by Elizabeth Junkie, not Junkie. I mispronounced her name last week. I feel bad. She had 18 kills and 20 digs, while Sammy Slaughter had 14 kills and 6 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of .216. Madison Harms also was in double digits in terms of kills with 11 kills, only 2 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of .249. In terms of digs, South Dakota actually outdug Omaha 67-59, and believe it or not, South Dakota actually hit 248 to Omaha's 188. How does a team that hits 248 lose to a team that hit 188? Let me tell you why. Omaha had 17 service aces. They also missed 17 serves, which has kind of been their Achilles heel, but that is probably Omaha's best serving game all year. So, good job to Omaha on serving up a storm. So, there's that little matchup. Now let's jump to the Pac-12, where we had quite a bit of upsets. This first one came against Stanford against Cal. Both teams were winless. Stanford was number 15 after losing to Arizona twice. The first set actually went Stanford's way as they kind of dominated that first set, 25-18. And then Cal took the second set, 25-23. The third set was mainly in favor of Cal as they hardly trailed. They never trailed, and there was only one tie, as Cal took the third set 25-21. In that third set, however, was probably the greatest play of right now, of the season, as Kendall Kipp dove for the ball, and then the ball was saved in bounds and in play and hit the floor, and the point went to Stanford. I will retweet that and pretty much say that it is play of the year worthy, as you could also check that out on the Stanford women's volleyball Twitter account, but I will probably quote tweet it and say that it is play of the year material. So there's that. Then back to the match. Stanford took the fourth set 25-22, and then it was anyone's match. But unfortunately for Stanford, Cal was able to take the fifth set 15-12, winning the match. And I believe that was actually the first time in 16 or 17 tries that Cal beat Stanford. So Stanford's season of nightmares continued, while Cal actually got their biggest win of the season. Biggest win of all time, probably. I know Stanford's not that great, considering they lost a lot to graduation, but it's still a noteworthy victory. So good stuff for Cal. So as for Cal, they were led by Katrina Pantovic, who had 15 kills, 6 hitting errors. She took 57 swings and only had a hitting percentage of 158. That makes you wonder how this team was able to pull out the victory. Makana Mayer had 12 kills, while Bella Bergmark had 10 kills. She didn't have any hitting errors, and she had a hitting percentage of 588. In terms of serves, this was probably what helped Cal win. They had 12 service aces, and 5 of which went to Isabel Potter, who, like I said, had 5. Lydia Grote had 3 service aces, and then Katrina Pantovic had 2 service aces as well. So that's pretty impressive. They served the ball well. They only missed 9 serves overall, so good stuff. In terms of digs, Cal had 82 digs, 20 of which went to Gabby Belize, while Isabel Potter led the team with 23 digs. Katrina Pantovic had 12 digs, and Kendall Jansen had 11 digs. As a team, Cal only hit 131, which, again, I was surprised that they hit that low. Anyway, Stanford was led by their redshirt freshman Katie Baird, who had 16 kills. She had only 3 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of 289, but she did take 45 swings. That was when you know Stanford was having an off night, because when a redshirt freshman is leading your team, that's when you're struggling. Also, Stanford did not have Megan McClure, who is the only senior on that team. I'll be talking a lot more about Stanford's roster in the second part of the show. So, Kendall Kipp had 15 kills. She did have 9 hitting errors, so that was kind of what weighed Stanford down. Natalie Birdie and McKenna Vicini had 9 kills apiece. In terms of assists, Selena Zhu had 45 assists. Stanford had 5 service aces but missed 15 serves. That was a killer right there. Stanford had 16 blocks, which compared to Cal's 6, which is quite mind-boggling. Stanford also had 82 digs, as Alina Ogalive had 21 digs, while Kendall Kipp had 16 digs, and Vicini and Birdie each had... Natalie Birdie and Katie Baird each had 14 digs. As a team, Stanford hit 192, which is still underwhelming, but it's not as underwhelming as Cal. Once again, a team that hit so much lower than the other team won, despite getting out-hustled in some stats. But, I don't know. It was still a good victory for Cal. But Stanford did get the last laugh as they beat Cal at Stanford, and that match actually had Megan McClure. I'm not gonna get fully into it because I knew Stanford was gonna win that one, especially since they had Megan McClure. And we say what's good to Davidson Crooks. Thank you for joining in. So we're almost to my favorite part of last weekend. So we just gotta get this UCLA-Washington matchup out of the way. Washington upset number 10. Or no, UCLA, which was, I think they were like 18 at the time. They were number 18 in the nation. Upset number 10 Washington in 5 sets. They won the first set 25-20. The second set Washington won 26-24. The third set UCLA won 25-22. The fourth set Washington won 26-24, and then UCLA won the fifth set 15-11. In terms of kills, UCLA was unsurprised. Wait, what? Why is there someone who has the number 0 not on here? Anyway, that's weird. Anyway, UCLA was led by Mac May, who had 10 kills, but she did have 13 hitting errors and only hit 54 on the night. But she still got the job done. It also helped that UCLA had other hitters such as Emily Ryan and Allison Jacobs pick up the slack as they each had 10 kills apiece. I now know who number 0 is. That is... I forget her first name, but her last name is Endai. Like, her name is actually not appearing on the box score, which is not good. So, oops. Come on, UCLA. What are you doing with your box score? But anyway, Njai had 18 kills, and she hit 244. Now, in that match, in that little upset between UCLA and Washington, UCLA actually lost setter Devin Cheng to a non-contact injury. So I guess she might have tweaked her ankle or something. I don't know the whereabouts of this injury, and unfortunately, I don't plan to know to know about her injury. But all I know is that it was a non-contact injury that Devin Chang was forced to leave the game, and she didn't return. So there's that. UCLA had 9 service aces compared to Washington's 5. UCLA also had 65 digs compared to Washington's 53. That is quite astounding. Mac May actually led the team in digs with 19, while Zoe Fleck had 16 digs, and then Endai had 12 digs. As for Washington, they were led by Claire Hoffman, who had 15 kills, Samantha Dreschel had 14 kills, and Maddie Ensley had 10 kills. As a team, Washington only hit 147, which is why they lost. As for service aces, I said they had 5 service aces on the night. In terms of blocks, they had 17 blocks as a whole, compared to UCLA's 12, which is quite astounding. But the story of the night was their hitting percentage, and they got outdug by 12, so good stuff for UCLA, but Washington did get the last laugh as they swept UCLA on the second night. But again, without Devin Chang, it's not really going to be easy for UCLA to pull back-to-back upsets. So, as we say hello to Davidson Crooks, I think I already said hello to Davidson. He says, "What's good?" Davidson, I'm actually getting to the SEC right now. And then Marcus Losgray pops in and says, TC in the house, which is Tuesday Crew. All right, now for my favorite upset of this weekend. So this one is the last noteworthy upset of NCAA women's volleyball, and it was Missouri versus Tennessee. So on paper, I thought Tennessee was going to get spanked, because Tennessee had not played in over 3 months, and Missouri was the number 16 team in the nation, which means I think UCLA was actually the number 18 team in the nation. So I said UCLA was 16, they're 18. Missouri was number 16. So anyway, I thought Missouri was going to just easily breeze pop by this, but Tennessee actually showed everyone up as Tennessee took the first set 27-25. And it looked like they were going to take set 2 as well, as they were leading 25-24 late in the set, but then Missouri scores three straight points to take the second set 27-25. The third set, Missouri took that 25-18, and it looked like they were going to take set 4, but Tennessee dug deep and forced a fifth set, winning set 4 26-24. While they also took set 5, 15-11. Missouri eventually took a 2 to 3 point lead and never trailed. They kept their distance away from the Tigers, which was quite impressive. So as for the match, Tennessee had 4 players in double digits in terms of kills. They were led by Lily Feltz, who had 16 kills, only 3 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of 325. Daniel Mahaffey had 15 kills, only 4 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of 440. Also impressive. Jasmine Brooks had 14 kills, only 4 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of 278, as she had 36 attempts. While Morgan Fingal had 13 kills, 8 hitting errors for only a hitting percentage of 122, so there's that. In terms of assists, Natalie Hayward had 54 assists. In terms of aces, Tennessee only had 2 service aces, and they missed 22 serves, which kind of makes me wonder how Missouri lost. In terms of blocks, Tennessee had 9.5 blocks on the night, and they had 73 digs, and Tennessee surprisingly hit 296. For a team that had not played in almost 3 months, Tennessee really had no rust in that match. So good job to the Lady Fools. As for Missouri, they were led by Kylie DeBerg. And I guess Kylie got married, because her name is now showing up as Kylie Kuyaeva DeBerg. But I'm not going to go into that. So Kylie DeBerg had 23 kills. She did have 10 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of 169. And she was the only one in double... Well, actually, no. She was one of 2 players in double digits in terms of kills. Claudia Dillon had 11 kills, and she had 0 hitting errors, so there's that. But that was about it. Their next kill leader behind Dillon was Anna Dixon, who had 9 kills, 6 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of 100, and that was about it. Jaden Newsom had 41 assists, while Missouri only had 4 4 service aces, but they missed 13 serves. Not comparable to the 22 missed serves that Tennessee had, so there's that. Missouri actually only had 6 blocks on the night compared to Tennessee's 9.5, so there's also that. And then in terms of digs, Missouri had 68 digs, 17 of which went to Emily Brown, while Jaden Newsom had 13 digs, and Aaron Williamson had 11 digs. As a team, Missouri only hit 209. Now, that was what made me surprised. Missouri only hit 209. They're the number 16 team in the nation, facing off against a team that hadn't hadn't played a match in almost 3 months, and they hit that low of a hitting percentage. That is disappointing. That's disappointing right there. But it gets better for Missouri and Tennessee. As, believe it or not, Tennessee won the second match with the greatest of ease. Tennessee swept away number 16 Missouri. It was at Tennessee, and I think there were some fans allowed, but I don't care. Tennessee won the first set 25-22. Then they dominated the second set, winning 25-17. And then the third set, it was a little tight as Missouri had their backs against the wall, but Tennessee won that third set 25-22. So, good stuff for Tennessee. That was their biggest victories of the season, as only Kentucky has beaten Missouri this season, and they did it twice. But for Tennessee to do it is very impressive, as the second match, Tennessee was led by Morgan Fingal, who had 16 kills. She only had 1 hitting error for a hitting percentage of .429. Lily Feltz had 9 kills. She was the next kill leader. She didn't have a hitting error, and she hit .450 for the match. Tennessee only had 3 service aces. Believe it or not, Missouri and Tennessee each had 3 service aces and 9 service errors, so that's quite funny. Tennessee also had 9 blocks on the night, as they had 10 block assists and 4 solo stuffs. And Tennessee had 50 digs, 13 of which went to Madison Bryant, while Natalie Hayward had 12 digs. And Tennessee as a team hit .308. Now, as for Missouri, they were pretty disappointing, as Claudia Dillon had 11 kills, 1 hitting error for a hitting percentage of .588. She was the only bright spot of that team. Kylie DeBerg had 8 kills and 6 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of .53. And Anna De Cruz had 9 kills, 3 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of .333. I'm not going to get into the assists, as Jaden Newsom had 28 assists, which I just got into the assists, but whatever. In terms of blocks, Missouri only had a grand total of four blocks. Just 4. And then they had 47 digs on the night. 12 of which went to Emily Brown, and 10 of which went to Leandra Mungwal Duran and Jada Newsom. And then as a team, Missouri hit a whopping 168. Missouri hit 168 against a team that had prior to the last match had not played in almost 3 months. All right. It's time. It's time, everybody. Remember that little rant I went on Texas A&M for their disappointing fall season from the fall? I gotta do this with Tennessee. Or, I'm sorry, I'm not against Tennessee. I gotta do this with Missouri. Missouri, you are the number 16 team in the nation. And you lost to a team who didn't even have 1 match of play for almost 3 months. How do you lose that? And let me tell you all something. Missouri, I don't know what everyone was thinking. I don't know what I was thinking that Missouri was actually going to make noise. Missouri has disappointed again. And let me tell you something. Missouri is probably the worst ranked team I've ever seen. They make Texas A&M look sane. They make Ohio State look elite. They may even look USC look elite. And we're talking about Southern California, not South Carolina. But Missouri, how do you lose 2 matches to a team that's 4-4 on the year? Tennessee's biggest victory was against South Carolina, and South Carolina's not even that great because they just lost to Texas A&M. But Missouri, this is the most disappointing thing I've ever seen. Like, there is a reason why no one takes Missouri seriously in the SEC. There is a reason why the SEC goes through Florida and Kentucky, not Missouri. And Missouri just proved that otherwise. And believe it or not, prior to last year, Tennessee had won 3 straight. Last year, Missouri got the better of Tennessee. They won 2 matches over the Lady Vols. But tonight, or this past weekend, Missouri lost twice to Tennessee. Missouri couldn't even afford another loss in the SEC. They were trailing Kentucky by 2 games, and Kentucky had the tiebreaker. And you go on and lose to Tennessee. Don't get me wrong. Tennessee deserves all the credit in the world. They deserve both of those victories. I was very impressed. I got to tip my hat to them. I'm going to give them a brief round of applause. Okay, that's it. But good job to Tennessee. But Missouri, number 16 team in the nation, my left foot. How do you lose to a 4-4 team whose biggest victory was against South Carolina? Absolutely disgusting. Tennessee is basically your daddy or mommy. I don't care. You disappointed me. You are now suspect. You are the second most suspect team in the SEC. Your SEC hopes, your SEC championship hopes, they're gone. You're not winning the SEC. Kiss it goodbye. You're not catching up to Kentucky. Heck, you might not even catch up to Arkansas. And you beat Arkansas. You might not even catch up to the 5th place team. Like, let me tell you how disappointing Missouri was. Disappointing. Let me tell you how Missouri got to be where they are. Let me tell you how they got to be the number 16 team in the league. Or number 16 team in the nation from last week. Missouri had only lost 2 matches. They were to Kentucky. That's reasonable. But you look at all their wins. Most of their wins came against 5-set matches against lowly SEC teams. One of which came against Ole Miss, and that team is nowhere near good in the SEC. One of their 5-set matches was against Arkansas, and Arkansas's biggest win before that matchup against Missouri was against Mississippi State and Ole Miss. And then a couple weeks ago, Missouri's had to go 5 sets with LSU, both of which they allowed LSU to lead 2-1 in the match. And then against Ole Miss and Arkansas, Missouri was actually leading 2-0 in the match. And then Ole Miss and Arkansas both rallied to force a 5th set. So why are we saying Missouri is the number 16 team in the nation? They don't deserve to be ranked. They don't deserve to be one of the better teams in the SEC. They don't deserve to be the SEC champions. Heck, they might not even deserve to be the number 25 team in the nation. Spoiler alert, they're still ranked. Give it to a team that actually is winning. Give it to a team that didn't disappoint. Give it to Ohio State. Give it to USC. Don't give it to Missouri. Missouri, as far as I'm concerned, is the most suspect team in the SEC. And you want to know something? It wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if Missouri lost to Georgia this week. Missouri plays Georgia this week, and guess what? Georgia actually has an SEC upset over Florida this season. Let me tell you something. Missouri, after this performance, after this horrible performance against Tennessee, has disappointed me. I will not consider Missouri as an elite team until I see Missouri improve. They can't improve against Kentucky because they have already lost to Kentucky. And then last week's match against Florida, I'm going to say it right now, Florida, if it weren't for that COVID little outbreak, Missouri probably would have gotten the pants beaten off of them. Let me tell you why, because Florida is actually consistent. Sure, their losses to South Carolina and Georgia say otherwise, But at least they're not having to go 5 with some of the lowly teams in the SEC. I don't know what to tell you, Missouri. Like, at least Florida still has a shot to win the SEC. At least they have a decent chance of winning the SEC. Your chances of winning the SEC, however, Missouri, are gone. They're done. And even if you do make the NCAA tournament, you're going to get one and done. I don't care who it's against. I don't care if it's against Oregon, Michigan. I don't care who it's against. You're getting one and done in the NCAA tournament, my dudes. Sorry, but that is the truth. Sorry, not sorry. I am disappointed, and to quote my boy Marcus Los Great, the nerve of you. The nerve of you for being a ranked team, losing on the road to a 4-4 team who hadn't even played a match in almost 3 months. 3 months! And to put the cherry on top of things, Tennessee's previous series against Texas A&M got postponed. That gave them even more rust. So, the nerve of you, Missouri. Disappointing! I'm sorry, but I had to get that off my chest. I had to get it off my chest. Missouri cannot win the SEC. At this point, Missouri needs all the help they can get. The only way Missouri wins the SEC is if they run the table and then Kentucky loses 5 matches. That's right, 5 SEC matches. And consider this, Kentucky holds the tiebreaker over Missouri. And that's not even the worst part. The worst part is that Missouri also needs Florida to lose matches. They also need Florida to lose 3 matches. And who knows if that Missouri-Florida matchup is getting played again, considering that got postponed. And then they also got to hope that Arkansas loses along the way as well. Yes, Arkansas. Missouri is so bad, they were so bad this past weekend, that Arkansas is all alone ahead of Missouri for 3rd place in the SEC. And you mean to tell me Missouri is still ranked and Arkansas isn't? Let's give the number 25 ranking to an actual team that's actually performing well. Give it to Ohio State, Arkansas. Heck, give it to a team that's like in a non-Power 5 conference. I'm just saying, y'all. Give it to Kansas City for all we know. But don't give it to Missouri. Like, Missouri, disappointed. That's all there needs to be said. And they are no longer the elite SEC team. Like, if Arkansas gets into the NCAA tournament over Missouri, oh, the laughter I will have. So welcome to the pit of misery in terms of the SEC. You joined Texas A&M, and believe it or not, Texas A&M actually won their series against South Carolina last weekend, as they beat South Carolina in 4 sets in both their matchups. I don't know if that's considered an upset, considering Texas A&M also didn't have a matchup in almost 3 months, but back to Missouri, they are back in the SEC pit of misery. Dilly dilly. Alright, that's my little rant on Missouri. And for those that tuned in, I applaud you. And for those that listened to that little rant, I appreciate you listening to that rant. Like, it needed to be said, though. Like, Texas A&M, I never really go on rants, but when it comes to ranked teams who are underachieving, it has to be done. Texas A&M had that happen last fall when they had a paper soft schedule, and then they wound up only going 4-4, which actually saw them winding up losing their last 4 matches of the fall season. So I had to do it on Missouri. I'm sorry, but and the thing about Missouri is that Missouri was actually at full strength. To my knowledge, Missouri actually had their players such as Kylie DeBerg, Anna Dixon, and a bunch of their other players as well. So Missouri, there you go. Yeah, and Claudia Dillon and whatnot. Yeah. Missouri had all those players. They didn't have a whole lot of players. They didn't have players that missed the game. Otherwise, I would have known about it. So, sorry, Missouri. That's what you get. All right. I think we now need to take ourselves a little bit of a break and just get that, just to take ourselves a little breather, get myself a little drinky drink, and let's give everyone a chance to recover from my little rant. So, we're going to take ourselves a quick little commercial break. When we come back, we are going to preview the noteworthy up-and-coming NCAA women's volleyball matches. And I'll also be talking about a little NCAA men's volleyball matches. So you're listening to Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hey guys, it's Blake Henley, better known as H-Town Blake to some of you. Happy to announce that Bases Loaded is back in full force. We'll be bringing that high heat every Tuesday night here on IE Sports Radio. So come home, get ready, dig into that batter's box, and see if you can chase that high heat, baby. So we'll be coming to you live with all the stats, all the rundowns, all the division rivalries, and every team that's going to make the playoff push to get to that one and only October and get to the pinnacle of what baseball is, to hoist that Commissioner's Trophy when it's all said and done.
What's good, fight fans? It's your boy, Marcus Los Great, here to give you what you want, here to give you what you need. Yeah, man. Yeah. I'm coming to you live, straight from your mama's basement with a crispy white tea. We're coming to you live every Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Powered by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
And you could check out all of our amazing shows here on IE Sports Radio on several platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Spreaker, you name it. So definitely do check them out. Also check out my boy Marcus Losgreat, who will be going on in an hour and 5 minutes from now, as he'll be going on with Gloves Off. He does an amazing job with his show, and he just celebrated his 50th episode last week. So kudos to Marcus Losgreat. And also definitely check out Bases Loaded, which is going to be on Mondays at 7 p.m. Pacific Time, 10 p.m. Eastern Time. Brandon Buckingham and Blake Henley do an amazing job with their show. So there's that. So now on to segment 2 of Set Point. So before we get into the previews of this week's matchups, let's go over the top 25 women's volleyball poll. So the new top 25. So 25 through 20. So 25 through 22. So you're gonna understand why I said 25 through 22. So number 25, as I mentioned in my little rant, was Missouri, who dropped all the way from 16 to 25. Which Missouri actually had the biggest dip from last week. So I can't blame them though. Number 24 is Marquette. Number 23 is Stanford, who had the second biggest dip from last week, as they were number 15 and then fell all the way down to 23. And then number 22 is Oregon, who actually cracks the top 25 for the first time, as they have standout victories against Washington State and UCLA. And they're actually still in striking distance of the Pac-12 championship. So there's that. So 20 through 16, tied for number 20 is Western Kentucky and Creighton, who are both doing well. And it's always good to see non-Power 5 conferences do well in the top 25. And it's good to see non-Power 5 conferences in the top 25. 19 is Pitt. Number 18 is San Diego. Number 17 is Washington State. And number 16 is Georgia Tech. 15 through 11 is UCLA, Louisville, Notre Dame, BYU, and Purdue. 10 through 6 is Washington, Florida, Penn State, Utah, and Baylor. And then 5 through 1 is Minnesota, Nebraska, Kentucky, Texas, and your number 1 team in the nation, unsurprisingly, is Wisconsin. So Adam Karnick actually just asked about how the Big Ten was shaping up. So far, Wisconsin, Nebraska, and Minnesota are the top dogs in the Big Ten. Ohio State's also up there. They're also undefeated as well, so good job to them as well. So, and I'll be talking about them in a little bit. So there's the top 25 in terms of women's volleyball. The top 15 in terms of men's volleyball, numbers 15 through 11 are NJIT, McKendree, George Mason, Penn State, and Loyola. 10 through 6 is Grand Canyon, UC San Diego, UC Irvine, UCLA, and Pepperdine. And then 5 through 1 is Long Beach State, Lewis, UC Santa Barbara, Hawaii, and your number 1 team in the nation, unsurprisingly, is BYU, who apparently got 4 more first place votes according to MPSF Bias on Twitter, which is quite funny. So it's not really surprising when BYU is number 1. So there's that. Big shout to Phil Robinson, who just popped in the chat room. Thank you for tuning in, my brother. It means a lot. Or thank you for popping in the chat room. All right, so now let's go to some previewed women's volleyball matchups. So for this week, there's actually quite a bit of noteworthy women's volleyball matches in the NCAA. So the first matchup that actually just got started, or that actually happened earlier on in the day, and that was actually San Diego at Santa Clara. And San Diego actually won the first match 3-1. It was actually Santa Clara's first matchup of the season because of the Santa Clara guidelines, and they couldn't really bypass that. And their first few series were postponed. Their series against Loyola Marymount, BYU, and Pepperdine all got postponed. And their season opener was actually today at Santa Clara against San Diego, the number 18 team in the nation. And that was pretty much that. And unsurprisingly, I knew Santa Clara was going to lose that matchup. Not somewhat surprising was that Santa Clara actually took a set off of San Diego. Now, I know San Diego isn't really the best top 25 school, but they're certainly not the worst top 25 school. For a team that certainly had for a team that actually had to come in cold turkey, and for a team that just started their season, they actually didn't play bad. Santa Clara actually didn't play terrible. It's just that San Diego was just a couple more steps ahead of them, and that's pretty much to be expected considering San Diego had 4 matches going into today's match against Santa Clara, who hadn't even played a match. So we'll give Santa Clara a pass for this one, especially with the talent that they have on their team. They have 6 returning players from last year. As for San Diego, surprisingly enough, San Diego has not been at full strength. They have not had the services of Katie Lukes, who has, I don't know what's going on with her. I don't know if she's hurt. I don't know if she opted out. I don't know if she's having to follow COVID protocols. But surprisingly, Katie Lukes, who is a preseason All West Coast Conference member, is not playing for San Diego. However, San Diego is still 5-0, despite not having the standout from San Juan Capistrano. So, I'm just going to briefly go over San Diego's kill leaders. Their kill leaders include Roxy Wilbin, who has 58 kills, Thana Fayad, who has 49 kills, Grace Froling, the reigning West Coast Conference Freshman of the Year, has 47 kills, and that's about it. Ellie Schrader has 15 kills after Froling. And let me just say, kudos to Ellie Schrader, who wears... I think she wears glasses when she plays on the court. And I say respect the specs. So, good stuff for Ellie Schrader. So, yay! As a glasses wearer myself, I respect the specs. And I think everyone should respect the specs too. Anyway, as for their other leaders, Laura Medill leads San Diego in assists with 154. In terms of aces, they are led by Grace Froling, who has 7. In terms of digs, they are led by Cameron Tastad, who has 58 digs, while Roxy Wilbin has 45 digs. Laura Medill and Grace Froling each have 36 digs, and Thana Fayad has 39 digs. In terms of blocks, Ellie Schrader leads the team in blocks with 18, while Lauren Turner has 14 blocks. And keep in mind, Ellie Schrader is actually a freshman, so the fact that she's actually leading the team in blocks is quite impressive. And it's actually making San Diego quite dangerous as well. So, there's that. And as a team, San Diego is hitting .314 while holding their opponents to a hitting percentage of only 100. But consider this. San Diego's 4 wins prior to today were against St. Mary's, which... I mean, St. Mary's isn't bad, but they're certainly not the greatest team in the West Coast Conference. And then their other 2 wins came against Portland, which Portland actually took a set off them, surprisingly. But... now this is San Diego's biggest challenge as of right now. Santa Clara is actually a very good team, in my opinion. A very good team. And San Diego, or not San Diego, Santa Clara is led by the one, the only Julia Sangiacomo. And and surprisingly enough, that's how her last name is pronounced. Her last name is not pronounced Sangiacomo. Her last name is pronounced Sangiacomo, which... really stunned me. I'm like, whoa, I thought that her last name was pronounced something else. So that's good stuff right there. So I actually don't have Santa Clara's stats because they actually didn't play a game. This was only their first game of the season. However, I will say this, Julia is very crucial for their success. If Julia Sangiacomo can actually perform well, this is a Santa Clara team that could do some damage in the West Coast Conference. And just wait till their games against Pepperdine and LMU and BYU get made up. Like, they'll be fired up and ready to play, depending on who they face, or depending on when they face and who they have and who each team has and whatnot. So the thing about the Broncos, like I said, they only returned 6 players, and they have a second-year head coach in Aaron Lindsay, who has done a great job. Santa Clara went 21-12 last year. They made the NIVC after not making the NCAA tournament. The NIVC is basically like the NIT, which everyone knows what the NIT is. So... in terms of the roster for Santa Clara only has 2 seniors, 3 juniors, 1 sophomore, surprisingly, and 7 freshmen. This is going to be a young team for Santa Clara. But Santa Clara was actually chosen to finish 4th in the West Coast Conference this year. The problem is that we don't know when their matchups against BYU, Loyola Marymount, and Pepperdine are going to get made up, so... we'll see. And then, going into the series, Santa Clara actually had lost 10 straight matchups against the Toreros, as the Broncos lost today against the Toreros, and now have lost 11 in a row, dating back to November 1st, 2014. A lot of 2014 memories, or milestones, if anything can be broken. So... There's going to be some rust from Santa Clara, but I could see the Santa Clara team being a dark horse in the West Coast Conference. I could see them maybe knocking off Pepperdine. BYU is going to be very tough for them to beat, especially since BYU has been performing well as of late, even though BYU's opponents haven't really been anywhere near spectacular. Speaking of BYU is actually going to get their first test of the season as they're going to play Loyola Marymount, but I think they're playing in Los Angeles. I'm not 100% certain. I'd have to double check that, but it's going to be BYU's first test of the season. Now, LMU has not been anywhere near spectacular as most people have thought they were, and that's partially because they lost Erin Curl for the entire season. I don't know what happened to her. All I know is that she posted on Instagram saying, "I am saddened that the sport that I love so much is being taken away from me, but I will be back." I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but without Erin Curl, for those of you that don't know, actually transferred from Alabama, and she was a powerhouse for the Crimson Tide as well. So there's that. And LMU has struggled early on this season. They lost to San Francisco. They lost to St. Mary's. They beat St. Mary's early in the season, but their only wins are against Portland? I think their wins were against Pacific. Yeah, Pacific, not Portland. I could be wrong, though. I always get the two P's mixed up, but still. I think LMU may give BYU a decent match, but BYU is going to come out on top. As for San Diego, Santa Clara, I see San Diego winning tomorrow's matchup as well, so it'll be no surprise to anyone. So now let's get on into Washington, our next little matchup. We're going to stay in California for the Pac-12 matchup, as this one's going to feature Washington State against Stanford, and this one's going to take place at Maples Pavilion in Palo Alto, which is Stanford. So Washington State, I talked a little about Washington State. They have a very, very young team. Their team consists of 1 senior, 1 junior, 8 freshmen, and 7 sophomores. This is a very young team. But despite this, Washington State is ranked in the top 20, which is quite impressive. For a team that has only 1 senior and 1 junior, this team actually looks really promising. They're number 17 in the nation, which is quite impressive. And this year, and they are led by Pia Timmer, who has 104 kills, while Juliana Dalton has 90 kills. In terms of assists, they are led by Hannah Pukis, who has 303 assists, while in terms of digs, Pukis leads the team with 109 digs. As a team, Washington State hits .218 while holding their opponents to a hitting percentage of .173. So there's that. About Washington State. I just briefly talked about them. This isn't going to be one of the more noteworthy matchups, but this is a big test for Washington State. Now, as for Stanford. I remember when I told you that Stanford has only 1 senior? Well, that 1 senior is Megan McClure. She is the only returning starter from last year. She was the only returning starter from last year, as they graduated players such as Catherine Plummer, Jenna Gray, Morgan Hentz, Audrina Fitzmaurice, Madeline Gates. This is a Stanford team that is really going to struggle in the early parts of the season, and that has struggled in the early parts of the season, as they lost their first 3 matchups. However, Megan McClure is back after missing the first 3 games due to COVID-19 protocols, and they definitely missed her. Stanford really missed Megan McClure, as she only had 6 kills in the win over Cal, but her senior leadership really helped the Cardinal out, because without Megan McClure, this is a very, very young team, as Stanford has 1 senior, 2 juniors, 3 sophomores, and 7 freshmen. This is a very, very young team. And if anyone has this team going to the NCAA championship, you are one bold person. Like, Stanford is really going to struggle this year. It's going to be one of those building seasons, especially since McClure is just getting the cobwebs off of her and the rust off of her after not playing for the first 2 matches. So there's that. In McClure's pace, Stanford is led by Kendall Kipp, who has 59 kills, while Katie Barrett has 42 kills. McKenna Vicini has 25 kills, while Annabelle Smith, a freshman, I think she's a middle blocker, has 21 kills. Another player I could see having a big matchup, but was not present against Cal, was Natalie Birdie, who has 15 kills, and she actually has done well when it comes to digging the ball, but I didn't see her when it came to the second matchup against Cal, but I guess they didn't really need her. I don't know what happened to her. I don't know if she got hurt or she's following COVID protocols, or maybe Kevin Hamley just needed to have her go to the bench to hopefully try a new lineup. Either way, hopefully we do get to see her back on the court. Selena Zhu is assuming setter position as she has 139 assists. While in terms of aces, they are led by Malia Tafuga, who has 6 service aces. In terms of digs, they are led by Alina Ogolive, who has 58 digs, while Katie Beard has 39 digs. In terms of blocks, they are led by Annabelle Smith, a freshman middle blocker, like I said, who has 19 blocks overall. As a team, Stanford is hitting only 194, but they're holding their opponents to 166. So, to me, with Megan McClure back on the court and back with the team, this Stanford team looks very promising. I think this Stanford team has gotten all 3 of its bad matchups out of the way, and they're able to take down Washington State in not one, but both of those matchups. I'm not really buying Washington State. Washington State does have standout victories against Oregon, and they also have a standout victory against UCLA. But they had to go 5 with Arizona State, which has a very young team. They also had to go 4 with Arizona State, and then they kind of struggled with Colorado in the first matchup, but that was it. Other than that, Washington State hasn't really been the greatest team in the Pac-12, but they're doing enough to get ranked. So they're actually the 3rd highest ranked Pac-12 team in the conference. So kudos. But I have Stanford winning both their matchups against Washington State. I think Stanford still has experience despite losing a lot of players to graduation and despite having a rocky start to the season. Because remember, this Stanford team had their first 4 matchups canceled, not postponed, canceled, meaning they're not going to be played again, and those matchups are off the table. So Stanford is back, and they're going to definitely dominate Washington State. I'm sorry, but Stanford does really well at Maples Pavilion. That's another thing I also got to add. So I'm not trying to be a hater when it comes to Washington State. So to all you Washington fans out there, or Washington State fans saying, "Oh, this guy's a hater. He doesn't appreciate Washington State." Well, I'm sorry, but you're getting your first true test. Yes, you had another true test when you played UCLA, and yes, you split both those matchups. But now you get another test facing the reigning NCAA champions, and they have their best player back on the court in Megan McClure. So there's that. So now let's jump over to the Big East. We are going to Pierre Moss territory, as Larry B once called it, as we are going to preview the Marquette versus Creighton matchup. So Creighton and Marquette are 2 out of 5 non-Power 5 schools that are ranked in the top 25. Which is pretty cool, if you ask me. And believe it or not, Creighton and Marquette actually faced each other earlier in the season. However, both of those matchups were non-conference matchups. I guess both those teams agreed to facing one another because they can't get enough of that little rivalry between Creighton and Marquette. That's a really great rivalry game, and Marquette actually won the first matchup while Creighton won the second, and or vice versa. Either way, this is going to be a great matchup. Yeah, well, actually, no. Creighton won the first matchup in 5 sets, while Marquette won the second matchup in 3 sets. So, just got to get that cleared. So, Marquette is led by Taylor Wolf, who has 79 kills, while Hope Wirch has 72 kills. Hannah Vandenberg has 59 kills, while Savannah Rennie, who actually transferred from Cal, believe it or not, has 53 kills. So believe it or not, Marquette runs a 6-2 offense. They run two setters. They are led by Claire Mosier, who has 149 assists, while Taylor Wolf is also getting kills and assists, as she has 135 assists. That is really, really impressive that she has 135 assists, and she leads the team in kills with 79. So, kudos. In terms of service aces, Hope Wirch and Savannah Rennie lead the team in service aces with 12. In terms of digs, they are led by Katie... I'm probably going to butcher her last name. Katie Skoasau, who has 130 digs, while Taylor Wolf has 81 digs. And in terms of... Sorry, everybody, I accidentally knocked my mic. Claire Mosier has 58 digs, and Hope Wirch has 57 digs. So there's that. Now, as for Creighton is led by Keely Davis, who has 77 kills, while Kiara Reinhardt has 32 kills, Naomi Hickman has 31 kills, and Annika Welty has 19 kills. In terms of digs, they are led... Well, actually, no. In terms of assists, they are led by Allie Van Eckeren, who has 124 assists, while Mahina Pa'ua has 96 assists. In terms of service aces, they are led by Kiara Reinhardt, who has 9 service aces, while Erica Kostelak has 7 service aces. In terms of digs, they are led by Ellie Bolton, who has 77 digs, while Keely Davis has 65 digs, and Jayla Zimmerman has 59 digs. In terms of blocks, they are led by Jayla Zimmerman, who has 17 blocks. Actually, no, she doesn't lead the team in blocks. It is Naomi Hickman, who has 37 blocks, while Kiara Reinhardt has 22 blocks, and Jayla Zimmerman is third in blocks with 17. I don't know this team's hitting percentage because the overall statistics sheet that Creighton has is complete duty. This is the worst. Like, they have that old school stat sheet that I saw on the internet, and I'm like, this is not gonna do. So, the nerve of you, Creighton, for having not the best box score. So, as for my prediction for Marquette and Creighton, so both these teams split their matchups the first time around, and these two teams are obviously rivals with one another, and I think it's going to be a great matchup between these two teams. Now the matchups between these two teams actually count toward one another, and both these matchups are going to be at Marquette. Like, the previous two matchups were at Creighton, but now the Big East matchups are against Marquette, are at Marquette. So, I'm going to say both these teams split their matchups. Like, both these teams haven't even started conference play yet, but they've actually gotten some repetitions with other teams, as Creighton has faced off against teams such as Omaha, Northern Iowa, and South Dakota, while Marquette, aka the house that Dwayne Wade built, has had matchups against Illinois State, University of Northern Iowa, Drake, and DePaul. So, and then last week, Creighton also had a bye week, so there's that. As I also got to make note of that as well. So, I'm just going to say that both these teams split their matchups. Like, it's tough to predict a rivalry matchup, and I honestly think Creighton is slightly better, but after seeing Marquette sweep Creighton the second go-around, I think Marquette is a little bit of a step behind that team. So, there's that. So, I think I think Marquette is a good team, but I also think that Creighton is a much better team. Like, I think Creighton and St. John's both run the Big East, so there's that. So now let's get on into the Big Ten matchups. Now we get into the big, impressive matchups. So our first matchup is, and by the way, Marquette will be facing off against Creighton on Friday and Saturday, while Stanford and Washington State will be facing off against each other on Friday and Sunday. As for this next matchup, we have Ohio State, which is not yet ranked, facing off against number 8 Penn State, which just recently lost 2 matches against Minnesota, which isn't really surprising just because Minnesota is really good. But it is what it is. So Ohio State is 6-0. So everyone's probably wondering, why is Ohio State not ranked? They're 6-0. They're one of 5 teams that are undefeated in the Big Ten Conference. What the heck? Well, consider this. Ohio State is undefeated, but all 6 of their wins have come against the lower parts of the Big Ten Conference, as they beat Maryland, they beat Michigan State, and they beat Iowa, which all aren't really the best teams in the Big Ten. Like, none of those wins were ultimately impressive. Like, they had to go, Ohio State had to go 5 both times with Maryland, and they also had to go 5 with Michigan State, and then they also swept Michigan State, and they swept Iowa both times. They did struggle a little bit against Iowa the second time, but other than that, Ohio State looks pretty good. Here's the thing about Ohio State. They only have 2 seniors, but they have 5 juniors, 6 sophomores, and 3 freshmen. Ohio State is led by Emily Landot, who has 91 kills, while their next kill leader is Janasia Moore, who has 73 kills, and then Lauren Witt has 45 kills and whatnot. So there are their kill leaders. In terms of assists, Mac Podraza has 254 assists. In terms of service aces, they are led by Janasia Moore, who has 11 service aces. In terms of digs, they are led by Kylie Murr, who has 98 digs, while Janasia Moore has 54 digs. And then Emily Landot has 43 digs, as well as Mac Podraza. In terms of blocks, in terms of overall blocking, they are led by Lauren Witt, who has 28 blocks, while Emily Landot has 23 blocks, and Adria Powell has 14 blocks. As a team, Ohio State hits .241, while their opponents are held to a .155 hitting percentage. Adam Karnick says in the chat room, like any other college sport, it's not just winning, it's winning with style. That's true. And I honestly thought Ohio State could actually sweep some of these opponents. I know Maryland has some good talent on their team, but it's not the talent that Penn State, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Nebraska have. And that's kind of what's holding Ohio State back from being ranked. As now they're going to face Penn State, which I've talked a lot about Penn State. Penn State has only 1 senior. They have a graduate senior in Hannah Flowers, who transferred from Memphis. She's been crucial for the Nittany Lions. But the true story for Penn State is their junior class, as Penn State is led by Johnny Parker, who has 61 kills, while surprisingly enough, Kate Annie Fitzpatrick, a freshman, is second on the team in kills with 46, while Caitlin Horde has 44 kills, and Anastasia Kudryashova has 34 kills as well. And then Serena Gray has 31 kills. In terms of assists, Gabby Blossom has 97 assists, while Emily Orther has 82 assists. Orther actually started the season off. I don't know if Gabby Blossom had to follow COVID protocols, but here's the thing about Penn State. Their first their first four matches against the first four matches of the season got postponed. They were supposed to play Michigan and Ohio State earlier on in the season, and they all got postponed because of a COVID outbreak within Penn State's program, and their season didn't get started until they played Illinois from a couple weeks ago. And that's kind of the reason why I think Penn State was a little bit rusty. Also for the fact that Penn State has only one senior, and surprisingly enough, their senior hasn't even played a whole lot as well. She's only played 2 sets, as she only has 3 kills, so we haven't seen too much of Hannah Flowers. So the junior class is what's keeping Penn State going. And here's the thing about Penn State. Marcus said Penn State is for real. I totally agree. I think Penn State is for real. And despite losing to Minnesota, I think this is going to be Penn State's breakthrough match. Now, I don't want to pick against Ohio State, but Ohio State doesn't have that it factor that says, pick us, we're going to beat Penn State. Like, if Ohio State had like swept some of their matches, like other than that first match, I think Ohio State should have swept Maryland the second time. They should have swept Michigan State the second time. But I just think Penn State has that it factor, and they also have a very, very experienced head coach in Russ Rose. Like, nothing against Jen Oldenburg, the new head coach for Ohio State women's volleyball, but the Nittany Lions are just a well-oiled machine. And despite having a younger team than previous years, this team is for real. Their junior class is something to watch for. And next year, Penn State is most likely going to be the one that could possibly win the NCAA tournament this next year. So there's that. But we're not going to look that far into next year. We're not looking that far ahead, ladies and germs. So there is that for Penn State and Ohio State. I got Penn State winning that matchup. If Ohio State does win, I will let Andrew dunk on me on his show this Friday, and I'll let him sandbag me. And I will issue an apology to Ohio State women's volleyball. But I'm just being real, everybody. Like, in the description, you will see the thoughts of Teran Rodriguez are his and his alone, and not the thoughts and opinions of any third or second party organizations. So I'm just keeping it real, y'all. Like, I'm not trying to be a hater towards some of these teams. I'm just saying it, telling it like it is. So there's that. So now our last matchup of the week, and this is the big matchup. This is probably the matchup of the week, and this, in my opinion, deserves the primetime treatment. This should be on ESPN. It's going to be number 5 Minnesota at number 4 Nebraska. And this is going to be a fun matchup, as Minnesota went 2-0 against Penn State last week, while Nebraska went 2-0 against Rutgers. And surprisingly enough, Rutgers actually took a set off of Nebraska, which was the first time in program history that Rutgers took a set off of Nebraska. Actually, first time in Big Ten history, because I don't think Rutgers was a part of the Big Ten for too long, but until now. So the fact that Rutgers actually took a set off of Nebraska in terms of the Big Ten is quite impressive. I'm not going to lie. So I've talked about Minnesota women's volleyball. They have 4 seniors, 4 juniors, 3 sophomores, and 3 freshmen. They are led by Stephanie Samity, who has 133 kills, while Taylor Landfair has 95 kills. Adana Rollins has 88 kills, and surprisingly, their top dog, Reagan Pittman, only has 46 kills, and that's kind of been beneficial for Minnesota, as she's no longer has to put up big numbers, as she can be a force defensively and still help Minnesota put up big time numbers. And Adam Karnak says the Golden Gophers have been on a roll lately. Yes, they have. They have definitely been on a roll, and they're probably the second best team in the conference. Like, you could make the argument for both Nebraska and Minnesota. Or, I'm sorry, Minnesota and Nebraska, because Nebraska returns all of its players, or most of its players, while Minnesota returns a decent chunk of its team from last year. The thing that impresses me about Minnesota is that they don't need to have Reagan Pittman have a monster game offensively. Like she doesn't even come close in leading the team in kills, but she does everything else perfect to the point where she helps Minnesota win, and she's been a force defensively for Minnesota that Reagan Pittman has. So that's some good stuff. In terms of assists, Melanie Schaffmaster leads Minnesota in assists with 304 assists. Cece McGraw also has 35 assists as well, so I just got to mention that. In terms of service aces, they are led by Reagan Pittman and Rachel Kilkelly, who each have 11 service aces. In terms of digs, Cece McGraw leads the team in digs with 103, while Adana Rollins has 100 digs. Melanie Schaffmaster has 90 digs, while Stephanie Samity has 90 digs, and Rachel Kilkelly has 80 digs. So this is a team that likes to dig the ball a lot. In terms of blocks, Reagan Pittman leads the team in blocks with 31. What Reagan lacks in terms of offense, she makes up for it in defense, and she also does other things as well. Like, I even saw her setting the ball, and Minnesota was just in awe over her setting, and I'm like, that's pretty good. So, again, they don't need Reagan Pittman to go out and get like 20, 30, 40 kills a night when she's just doing the other little things better to help Minnesota get the victory. So, that's some good stuff right there in terms of Reagan Pittman. As a team, Minnesota is hitting .255 while holding their opponents to .190. Now, for Minnesota's wins, their wins were against Michigan State twice, Maryland twice, Purdue twice, both of which they went 5, and Penn State twice, and one of which they went 5. Now, as for Nebraska, this will be the first time I talk about Nebraska. Nebraska has 4 seniors, 3 juniors, 4 sophomores, and 4 freshmen. So it's a bit of a balanced bag here for Nebraska, as this is a Nebraska team that returns most of its players from last year, if not all of its players. They didn't graduate one senior from last year, so that's some good stuff. Nebraska is led by, in the kill department, Lexi Sun, who has 76 kills, while Lauren Stivrins has 68 kills. Maddie Kubik has 59 kills, while Riley Zune has 42 kills. In terms of assists, they are led by Nicklin Hames, who has 227 assists. If I said kills, that was my bad. She leads the team in assists, not kills. Nebraska's service ace leader is Lexi Sun, who has 10 service aces, while there are 3 different players with 6 service aces. In terms of digs, they are led by Nicklin Hames and Kenzie Knuckles, who each have 66 digs, while Maddie Kubik has 52 digs, and Lexi Sun has 44 digs. In terms of blocks, this team is led by Lauren Stivrins, who has 23 blocks, while 3 players surprisingly have 16 blocks as a whole. Kaylee Schwarzenbach has 13 blocks as well, as Nebraska is hitting .282 on the season while holding their opponents to only .139, which is pretty impressive. But before everyone says, oh my god, Nebraska has been great this year, consider this. Nebraska is also in the same boat as Ohio State is. Now, Nebraska is obviously miles ahead of Ohio State in terms of talent. But I'll also make note of this. Nebraska's wins have not really been impressive. They have two sweeps over Indiana. They're not one of the top teams in the Big Ten. They have 2 wins over Maryland, one of which they had to go 4 against the Terrapins. And then they have 2 wins against Rutgers, one of which Rutgers took a set off of Nebraska. So there's that. So, here's the thing about Nebraska. Are they ready to take the next step in the Big Ten? Compared to Minnesota, Minnesota has 4 standout wins against ranked opponents. They beat Purdue twice, and they beat Penn State twice. One of which Penn State actually led 2-1 in the match. So, there's that. can Nebraska silence its critics and take the next best step to knocking off a team better than them? My thing is yes, but that defense for Minnesota is very, very, very good. And Nebraska, to me, this is going to be their first challenge, while Minnesota has been battle-tested. Like, to me, I think it could go either way with both of these teams. I think both Minnesota and Nebraska split these matchups, but I will also say this. It wouldn't surprise me if Minnesota won both these matchups. Like, I will say this. I think his name is John Cook. John Cook, or it's either John Cook or Keegan Cook, because both, I always get the Cook coaches mixed up, because there's because Keegan Cook, I think, coaches Washington, while John Cook coaches Nebraska. So I don't know if they're brothers. I don't know that for a fact, but I will say this, that Nebraska is well coached. The same can be said for Minnesota, and there's a reason why both these teams are undefeated, and both these teams are in the top 5 when it comes to the NCAA rankings. And here's the thing about both these teams. These two teams could actually meet in the NCAA tournament. It is possible. And another thing is that whichever team wins will have the inside track for second place. Now, if both teams split the series with one another, that gives Wisconsin the clear pathway to finishing first. As of right now, like, you never know what could happen along the way. Like, not everyone is invincible, because looking at Wisconsin's matchup for this week, I'm pretty sure Wisconsin plays Michigan State, but next week is going to be crucial for Nebraska. Now for Nebraska, next week they play Wisconsin, and that is huge right there, especially since both those matchups are going to be at Wisconsin, and it's going to be a crucial matchup for both the Badgers and for the Huskers. I think they're now known as the Huskers and not the Corn Huskers, so I'm pretty sure it's just the Huskers. We're just going to call them the Huskers, okay? Okay. But Minnesota has been I think Minnesota has been battle-tested. They just recently passed a very talented Penn State team, despite Penn State giving it everything they got against the Golden Gophers. And then the previous week they had to outlast Purdue in 5 sets. I think one of which Purdue almost beat Minnesota, but Minnesota was able to pull out the victory. Like, Minnesota was actually down 22-19 against Purdue in the second matchup after they were down 2-1 in the match, and it looked as if Purdue actually had the match on lock, but to everyone's impressiveness, or to everyone's dismay if you're a Purdue fan, or if everyone is impressed about Minnesota's resilience, Minnesota was able to dig their way out and win the matchup against Purdue. They forced the 5th set, and yeah. So I really think Nebraska and Minnesota split their matchups with one another. I hate to be that boring guy, but I just think that Nebraska does have what it takes to knock off Minnesota. And the thing about Minnesota is that they're now going to get a true test. Like, they obviously passed Purdue, and they obviously passed Penn State, but they've kind of had to go. It's kind of been a little close in terms of facing both of those teams. When they face Nebraska, it's going to be a whole different ballgame, my dudes and dudettes. Like, it's going to be quite the war for Minnesota, and this could be what decides second place, if not which team stays in first place, because Minnesota also has another challenging matchup next week against Michigan. But for right now, they play at Nebraska, and it's going to be at Nebraska. I don't know if they're going to be allowing fans in the stands when it comes to Nebraska, but if fans were allowed in the Nebraska stands, honestly, it would be quite something, considering Nebraska does have a loyal fan base when it comes to women's volleyball and whatnot, so there's that. And thank you, Marcus, for saying great show, and he's about to get ready for his show, Gloves Off, which goes on in 20 minutes. But my final verdict for Nebraska and for Minnesota. Nebraska and Minnesota split their matchup. I hate to be that person, but I just think both those teams are practically evenly matched. And I think both those teams... It's tough to... It's like picking your favorite child. But I gotta give credit to both those teams. Especially Minnesota. To be undefeated at this point of the season, despite facing 2 ranked opponents, is very impressive. But I think that's going to do it for tonight's show. I thank everyone for tuning in. Thank you to everyone in the chat room for popping in. Thank you to our sponsors, Legacy Financial. It goes down in the Legacy Financial, Mom is Always Right Media, and their 2 podcasts, It Goes Down the PM and Coffee After Dark, as well as the Sports Rundown. So, great stuff. Thank you for being the official sponsors of iSports Radio. Thank you to Adam, Marcus, Larry B., Andrew Hagenbaugh, and even Phil Robinson for popping in the chat room. I definitely appreciate y'all tuning in and showing me the love. It means a lot to me, and thank you to all of our listeners. You can follow iSports Radio on Twitter at IESportsRadio, and you can also follow them on Instagram at IESportsRadio. And then if you are on Facebook, go to the search bar, type in IE, the word sports, then radio, and you see a black logo with white letters. That's us. Definitely like us or follow us on Facebook. And if you can, definitely leave us a nice little rating as well. It definitely helps us out and helps our channel and our station grow. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, make sure to leave us a 5-star rating if you can, because it really helps us grow and produce better content and helps us improve and give us the motivation to continue to deliver for the people, by the people, and vice versa. But that's going to do it for tonight's show. It is that time, ladies and gentlemen. It is that time to drop the beat, because I'm about to dip like a banana in chocolate. You feel me? Thank you all once again for tuning in to Set Point. I really appreciate y'all tuning in. If you're listening on the replay, I appreciate it. Playback, whatever it's called, I definitely appreciate it. If you're listening live, I really appreciate it in advance. And I appreciate you giving the support of Set Point. You are what makes this show continue to go. I can't believe I'm 77 episodes already. I'm going to be saying that from now until the 100th episode. It's quite astounding. Like, we're actually getting to the point where I'm going to be reaching a milestone. Like, March 2nd is going to be a milestone for me. What is this milestone? Well,